qualification to speak is not how much you necessarily know intellectually. The qualification to speak is how much you've given your will over to God. So it's not even an age factor, right? And from a growth factor, it's not measured in the way that we measure growth in today's society.
Yeah.
We measure growth based off of your intellect. We measure growth based off of your maturity. And we ascribe your maturity based off of your conformity to a system that exists. And the behaviors that we say you should have within the context of that system. But I like Peter and John, who, you know, they were fishers before. I mean, that's all they did, right? And yet they didn't have the intellect that maybe the rabbis had and the priests had of their day, or the Pharisees of their day, or the Sadducees of their day. Yet they spoke boldly because they walked with Jesus for 3.5 years.
Yeah. But does it mean when God says my strength is made perfect in weakness? So when I first think about this question, I think about when I went through a mini midlife crisis.
A mini midlife crisis. Wow, that's a...
And I call it mini because I was just watching another podcast, and she was talking about the frontal lobe when you turn 25 and like you just go through, and she called it mini. I'm like, that's exactly what it was for me too. Like, wow. And everybody's in the comments like, oh my gosh, I feel the same way. Oh my. And I'm like, yeah, that's literally what it was.
All right.
And it's just like, I was at a point in my career, well, like, I can be in my career. I mean, I was in my career, post-college, yeah. But I was like at a point where I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I'm like questioning myself in like areas that I haven't worked on in a while, like academically and all this other stuff. And I was at a point where I was just like, what am I doing right now? Like, it was just like I was in the motion of moving through life, but I was just like not moving up here. Like I was just kind of numb in space and time, just like doing the regular things to just get through the day. And I never thought I'd get to that area in my life, but it just, something hit me, I guess, when I turned 24 or something, right before 25. And I'm just like, what am I doing? And so when I think about this question, I remember when I was in this headspace, because honestly, to the average person on the outside, they'd probably think, oh, she's doing great. She's booking these shows. She's doing this. Like, she's smiling all the time. Like, life is great for her. So, like, and I know my situation compared to others seems like she has nothing to complain about. So I felt like, I guess in the moment I had nowhere to turn to almost, because I feel like if I complained, I would feel guilty for like other people's situation. You know what I mean? And so when I think about this question, it reminds me how I wouldn't know anywhere else to go but to pray to God. And that's what I did just for the longest. I couldn't even tell you how long I did it for, even before our paths crossed for this experience here. And I didn't know what it looked like. I was just like, hey, just talking to him, and then the way everything has since then unfolded, this hearing my strength is made perfect in weakness, I can resonate in that now, be like, wow, I was at a point in my life where I felt so weak and I had nowhere else to turn to, nowhere else to go. At least I felt like that. And then he answered my prayers, right? Is that the way I could say it? But
I mean, so, okay, you...
I know, I took you on a whole...
No, yeah. And there's a number of things to touch on.
Yeah.
There. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even sure that I'll be able to tackle them all, but I'm going to try, which means that you guys are for a very long piece from me as I try to tackle all these things, and related to the condition, right? Because what you just described and why it likely resonated with so many is because it is a common condition of our system.
Yeah.
Right? And what does that mean? Because I know a lot of folks can take that a whole lot of ways. Systematic oppression. No, I'm not going there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with point number one. We've been conditioned to lie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to show what's really going on in their world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to know that I'm really like clueless about what's going on, that I'm kind of going through the motions and doing the best that I know how, even though I really don't. I'm really like trying to, I don't know. I help me, somebody,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't say that, because if I say that, then I would expose myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be perceived by the world as a form of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I'm weak.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that I'm trying to figure it out. And I thought, you told us to go to school, get good grades. You told us when we graduated, go to college and pursue a career. You told us that you made us think that when we went to college and came out, that when we got that piece of paper, doors were going to open up and things were just going to work out. But the people that told us that were the people who were also hoping that that was true.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't always pan out that way, right? Like, if you talk to more people on the tail end who've gone through those experiences, they will tell you it's not enough, right? And so when you get to that place, you're somewhat bewildered by the whole experience, because you checked those boxes, but yet things still have not necessarily panned out the way that it was portrayed to you, some time ago. The mini midlife crisis. So first of all, let's get rid of the lie. Let's be honest.
Okay.
Right? Let's be honest with ourselves first, right? And then I don't want to say necessarily be, forthcoming with personal information to people who don't really have your best interests in mind. I would say, obviously, you relegate what it is that you're going to communicate to those who have shown themselves to be invested, in your future. That's the first and foremost piece. But then now the other part. Well, there's so many parts here. There's another part where, you said the mini midlife crisis. So let's be clear about what midlife crisis is, and then let's tie that into kind of where you guys going in that statement, and that resonated with everybody, right? That was in the feed or whatever, which is, what is a midlife crisis? Well, a midlife crisis is what you guys would call FOMO. So you get to your 40s, midlife, because on average, people live to 70 or 80 years old, right? So in your 20s, you're not at your midlife, you're at the quarter mile, right? And so you get there, and by your 40s, you should have things figured out, right? These are considered our golden years, between 40 and 50. And the reason is because you've been hopefully working long enough to be well within your career. You should be progressed enough in your career that you're in a leadership position or role. And it's also a time where you have the most knowledge within your craft to where you can now start to really elevate yourself at a pace that impacts things like your lifestyle based off of your income that you can generate. You're considered somewhat of an expert in your field around that time, which means that people listen to you or look to listen to you. Which means that you're educating people, that you're pouring into people. And so these are the golden years. By the time you hit your 50, they say that, you're close to your way out. This is kind of how it shapes out in the world within our workforce, within the United States of America. Mm-hmm. And so when you take all of that in consideration, what happens during that time is, a lot of questions get asked by people which is akin to the same questions that you're asking yourself around 25, mm-hmm. right? Which is, where's my life going? Mm-hmm. When I say FOMO, the fear of missing out, yeah. right? Well, people who have a midlife crisis, mm-hmm. right, is often equated with feeling like they gave up something and lost themselves mm-hmm. while pursuing, their careers and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to recapture, right, the years that they thought they lost. So the signs of a midlife crisis, mm-hmm. What would be considered extreme changes in a person. They go buy a sports car.
Yeah.
What does every young guy want, mm-hmm. When they get out of high school? I mean, these are common cliche, mm-hmm. Midlife crises. Buy a sports car and, yeah, try to relive being young again, mm-hmm. right? Go buy a motorcycle. I mean, for guys, mm-hmm. it's usually stuff like that. Changes to hairdos. Mm-hmm. For women, it may be wearing clothes that they shouldn't necessarily, mm-hmm. Be wearing in their 40s that they would have worn in their 20s, right? Mm-hmm. And feeling like, yeah, let me relive. So, okay, some folks may say that's a very generalized, but it is, but it's also very much true. Mm-hmm. And the difference in the two, the mini, as we're calling it, I guess, I would call it welcome to adulthood, called adulting, right? It's kind of where you kind of believed the cookie cutter path that people laid out for you, mm-hmm. and then you followed that cookie cutter path, and then you're like, this is it? And then you get there and you're like, well, how do I get to X? And nobody actually really gave you the full blueprint. Mm-hmm. And then you're also subject to all these decisions that you made, and you start looking at those decisions and you start questioning, man, well, was that the right decision? I'm not where I thought I would be at this age. Well, should I pivot? Well, I don't want to pivot. Well, I know where I'm at is not where I want to be. And then you're sitting there, and so you're having your mini midlife crisis because you feel like, should I have done something differently? Well, it's not too different from what a person goes through in their midlife crisis. And I'll just say that you're not secure in the decisions that you made mm-hmm. and where you are, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. People who are really goal-oriented, right? They find their security in hitting those goals, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
And the thing that I'll say to that, to make sure that I can move on to some of the other important mm-hmm. pieces, is that when nobody's really giving you what is a repeatable blueprint mm-hmm. to get to where you want to be, all you're left with is the hope of where you want to be. Mm-hmm. And then whatever version of execution, the steps that you take to get there. When it doesn't happen either in the timing that you had hoped, or when the station in which you find yourself mm-hmm. is nowhere near to where you're trying to get to in the time that you're trying to get there, that can leave a lot of doubt, right? And that term doubt, mm-hmm. right? I use FOMO,
yeah,
right? Fear of missing out. Mm-hmm. And that fear of missing out, it's kind of rooted, right, in the doubt. And so you try to force the issue. You're trying to force an issue that is somewhat, it doesn't align with the path that you're on, right? Mm-hmm. And so in this particular case, when you're having your, we'll call it mini, you start to doubt your choices. Because how long you start to face these realities that, okay, this is where these choices have gotten me to. And I've been here for a little bit. And this isn't where, and with every letdown, every time it doesn't pan out the way that you think it should, you get further and further and further away in your mind from where you're supposed to be, to the extent that you start doubting if you'll ever get there. Yeah. Which leads to the question of, what am I doing? Right? And so now let me go to my next point. The reason that we run into those things is because not many of us have guides. Mentors make a difference. People who've been there and done it and can walk you through and get you there to where you're going to, or where you desire to be, makes the world of difference. Having somebody say, oh, let me help fast track you to get there. Here, let me help you dodge these mistakes that I made, when I was, or let me help give you the blueprint that was given to me to help me get here, right? I could guide anybody into, if somebody wanted to, if said to me today, hey, I want to be a well-paid programmer working in IT, and I'm hoping you could help fast track me. Sure, I can do that. I can tell you what to focus on, what not to focus on. I can tell you the trends that are taking place. I can tell you the various things to focus your attention. I can tell you what books to read. I can tell you all of these things. I can give you pointers. I can give you direction. Things that would make the journey shorter and easier, because it gives you more security, because you'd be secure in the information that you're receiving to get to where you're going. And then along the way, you'd see results, and those results would reinforce those things which you wouldn't have otherwise known to be, whether or not they're true. Like if it's working, right? And that's really what it comes down. Is this working? Because if it's working, then I can keep working it, right? But if it's not working, then do I keep doing this? So mentors are important. Guides are important. Fathers in the faith are important, which is the last point that I'm getting to. Without mentors and guides, without fathers, mothers in the faith, the journey is that much harder. Because we need those who've been there and walked through some things to reach back and tell us that what we're going through is normal. Right? And that to keep going, and you will get there, right? And the same way that confidence is built up when you have a guide, when you have a mentor that tells you, these are the things that, and these are the things that you need to do. These are the things you're going to go through. Here's how to respond to this. Here's how to react to this. Hey, and then you can call them up when you're at any given moment to get that additional, on-demand advice while you're dealing with something. It makes going through whatever you're going through that much more palatable, right? Digestible. You can handle it better. And in faith, God's strength is made perfect in our weakness, because our weakness in many respects in the faith is not necessarily knowing, but trusting. I trust, God, that you will get me. You will fulfill your promise in me, right? That if I lean on you, that you will make a way, right? And with every time that I lean on you and you show up and answer, I am strengthened even more in my faith because I know that when I call on you, you're going to answer.
Yeah.
And over time, it erases doubt in my mind, in my heart, in my spirit, because every time I've called on you, you've shown up. Not always the way that I think you should show up, but you never let me down. Not always in the timing that I want you to show up, but in time. And so as a result, my faith is strengthened over time, and your strength is made perfect in my weakness, because without you, I couldn't have accomplished that thing. And now, because of the things that you have done, when I called upon you, when I couldn't do it myself, my testimony has grown. And now there's strength behind my testimony because I have things that I can call on to showcase to the world of how you worked in my life. And now you're made perfect. Your strength is made perfect in my testimony. And as I testify to others, and if they believe on the things which I've told them, and then they try those things themselves, and they call on you, and you show up in their life, right? And their testimony is built up because their faith is made stronger. And then as a collective, as the body, we become the living representation that God is here. Because we don't question, we don't doubt, we know. And when enough of us know, how then can you say that he's not real? Right? And so those are probably 4 elements that I could just pick out of what you said. Let me recap them. Stop lying to yourself. Be honest with yourself, right? So that you can be honest with others who may be able to help you. We do need mentors in our lives, right? Don't worry about missing out on things, right? Because that's natural, a natural progression of life. We're going to go through tough times, and it helps when we have a guide to help steer us along the way, and understand that one of the guys we're supposed to be calling on, the Holy Spirit, right? Calling on God to help strengthen us in the midst of our weak moments, to be an answer in the times where we're in need, and to allow ourselves to be strengthened and our testimony to be strengthened to share with others. You know, each one of those steps, those phases, those pieces is part of that bigger journey that we're on. And we have to be willing to actually walk those things out. But there is other paths that we can take that don't rely on God, that don't add strength to our witness about God, that become a hindrance to the expansion or the promotion of the kingdom, of the preaching of the gospel. And I'm sure we'll probably get into those with, some of the other questions that you have. But those are my takeaways from what you said, right? Which is, how do we make, what does that mean? His strength is made perfect in our weakness. It's when we can't do it and we allow him to show up for us, that strengthens our faith in the fact that he is real, and that he is God. He is present. And he will make a way. So, yeah, those are my thoughts.
No, that was great. I understood everything too.
Okay,
Like it
as
all
long as
made perfect sense.
As long as it makes sense.
No, it made perfect sense.
I said that was gonna be a long one. I don't even know. I hope that makes sense.
When you reviewed all that you had just talked about, the phrases that come to mind is, instead of like thinking like, why is this happening to me, more so like, what is God doing in me?
That's right.
Almost, right? And it's like a mindset shift. You have to like be actively thinking at all times when certain things are happening to you. You're like, why is this light still red? Why didn't I get to work on time? But like, things happen for a reason and you don't know what it is. And that's, especially in those moments, is where I look back, I'm like, oh no, you know what, I'm glad I didn't, you know what, I'm glad I got here when I did, not before, because this happened before, and I'm like, I'm glad I wasn't here for it. You know, you never know. So I guess my next question is like, in these moments, how do we like learn to at least in a way embrace the setbacks, embrace these things rather than fight them, and like embrace them while we're in our waiting season for him to show us like why we were waiting so long. You know what I mean?
Well, you know, okay, that's a very interesting. So for my biblical heads, they probably are like, yeah, you need to tell this one particular story, and I'm like, yeah, I got it in my head. I'm gonna hit that. I know what y'all thinking. So, but you know, there are certain things we should keep in mind, right? Your maturity will dictate your response to a situation, right? When we measure maturity, we relegate it usually to, you know, the traditional growth chart, which is infant, baby, right? Toddler, you know, and then all the way up, right? And we recognize those various different stages because in those various different stages, there are behaviors that we associate with those different stages. The Bible is no different. It talks about novices, babes in the faith, young men, and then fathers. And so all of those things just basically says that we go through stages of maturity. So that being understood, you have to understand, you know, what stage you're in. Now, that lends to being self-aware, right? And self-awareness is key because if you're not self-aware, that's how you fall into the lie. You start lying to yourself, right? It's one thing when you're lying to everybody else. Okay, they may or may not know. But when you start lying to yourself, you know, we got real problems when we start lying to ourselves. Shouldn't lie anyway. But that being said, your level of maturity is going to infuse itself in your reaction or response to a situation. It's mature to say what you just said. You said instead. Instead of, you know, why this happened to me, it becomes, what are you trying to do, Lord? What's going on? Right? Well, that's a more mature response to adversity. Right? And after you've encountered so much adversity in your life and you've gone through enough battles and overcome the adversity that you've encountered, then maybe your mindset changes about the adversity that comes your way. And instead of perceiving it as an impediment, or an obstacle, you perceive it as a challenge to grow, right? Or a means to get better. If you get a repeat situation that keeps happening, maybe, just maybe, you didn't learn that lesson, which is why it's being represented again, you know, at a different time in your life when you thought you may have already graduated from that particular issue. Why am I facing? Well, because maybe you didn't get better. A lot of times when people would get frustrated about different things, I can think back even to myself, but I'll spend a lot of my time changing people's perception of the situation that they're dealing with when you're giving counsel to folks, because it's always the worst for them. And we're emotional creatures. And so as a result, our emotions can get infused with our logic and can alter our logic. It can alter the way we are thinking about a particular situation or a circumstance. And when that happens, we read things wrong.
Yeah.
We're not reading it right. And sometimes it takes people who are outside, removed from the situation, to give us some objective thinking, because we're thinking more subjectively. We're not as objective in our thought process. And learning to manage your emotions is a sign of maturity. That's where we come up with the term emotionally mature.
Yeah.
Because you don't just react, right? You pause. You consider, then you respond, right? Which is different than a reflex, which is something happens and then you react.
Yeah.
I spend so much time dealing with youth and telling them about not reacting but responding and the difference between the two, right? And how that will save you in life. Responses are prepared.
Yeah.
Right? Reactions, there is no preparation. It is just a reflex. And we actually have to spend time understanding how to respond to situations and to not overreact.
Yeah.
But if you don't take time and be intentional about how you will respond to certain situations, you're almost guaranteed to overreact. And so what you find in many respects is people overreact to situations that if other mature people were placed in the same situation, they'd have a response. And the reason we overreact is because we don't know. We don't know what the appropriate response is to the situation because we have not considered it. If we would increase our knowledge about how to navigate various situations, then we don't overreact. Our emotions don't come into it. Think about the things that you know how to respond to that don't faze you.
Yeah.
Right? The things that you know other people would respond. People who are, less mature would respond a certain way, but I've matured, right? I don't act like a child anymore. Okay, that's beautiful. I'm glad you've grown in that area. But there's some other areas you still need some growth in. But think about how you respond in those situations. Why? Because you've learned to navigate those things, right? How do you respond when you're lost? Like when you think you're lost, you don't know where you are and it's dark. And then fear sets in. How do you respond in those moments? Are you cool, calm, and collected, calculated, know exactly how to navigate this situation, even though you're lost? No, people freak out when they're lost. Like, where are we? It's late. Where are we going?
When the lights go out.
When the lights go out. Yes. So when you're lost, you don't have necessarily an appropriate response. When you're found, you do. When you know where you are, when you got the map in front of you and you know where you're going and you know what turns to make, you know how far away you are from the location. And see, I come from a different era. I come from an era where we used to have to use road atlases, paper maps, right? And that's how you navigated how to go from point A to point B. There wasn't any, look, I'm showing my age. During the time when I was doing traveling, smartphones didn't exist. As a matter of fact, cell phones didn't exist. As a matter of fact, mobile phones in any type of way didn't exist back in the day when we were traveling. Like, you start thinking about things like car phones. These are just no different than, a rotary phone sitting on a wall where you, like, that's how far I go back when you used to have to, wind up the phone. So, all right. So anyways, when you're using atlas or paper maps, either you know how to read a map or you don't. Most of y'all wouldn't know how to read a map today. Y'all wouldn't. We hand y'all, y'all be like, "What's this? What's this paper? These are streets on it. You want me to do what? You want me to figure out my path?" Mm-hmm. But there's things you could benefit from, because guess what? It teaches you how to navigate terrain.
Yeah.
And so you don't freak out if you make a wrong turn. You're like, we made a wrong turn. Okay, so where are we? Well, okay, we're here. We're on these streets got signs. Oh, we turned it. We got to go back. We turned the wrong way, right? You're not freaking out. Mm-hmm. But if you're traveling somewhere and then your smartphone dies and you were using an app like Google Maps or Waze or Maps on your iPhone, and then it is, you like,
So no, this is why you get a phone holder that charges your phone while you can use it. You know what I mean? Never goes dead.
My charger port broke. I can't
right
charge
there.
my phone. So when you have these tools, but then you don't, and you're lost, people's natural reaction takes over, and they don't know how to respond. Mm-hmm. Versus somebody who knows how to pull out a paper, if you even have those anymore. I mean, who has that anymore? I mean, I'm using an old way back story. But that being said, when you know where you're going, that's when you're most confident. That's when you're most calm. Yeah. Right? When you know how to navigate a situation as it arises. Mm-hmm. I got so much experience in my field that things that pop up for other folks that they overreact to, I don't, because I've been there and seen that before. Mm-hmm. And I know it's fixable. I know that it can be addressed and that we can overcome it. And so there's no reason for me to overreact. Yeah. Right? Now, when you don't have that, then you're freaking out. Yeah. And so I say that to say, one of the most mature people inside of the Bible that we can look back on is Daniel, right? Daniel, and they have a Daniel fast, right? And this is where they basically fast for 21 days. Daniel, who was seeking an answer from God, fasted for 20, said, "I will not eat any pleasant bread, and I will not drink any good drink until I hear from God." Now, as that story goes in the book of Daniel, just read the whole book. It's good. Mm-hmm. The angel that's been dispatched, if you will, mm-hmm. to bring the answer of God to Daniel is held up by what's called the Prince of Persia, right? A demonic force that battling in the spirit realm is what we'll call it, right? And is delayed in being able to bring the message, the answer, the response from God. Mm-hmm. And as a result, Daniel ends up fasting for 21 days before getting his answer. And what it lets you know, that particular story, well, a lot of things going on there, is that it's not always the fact that God's not answering you. It's just that there are adversarial forces that are being contended with that end up causing a delay sometimes in your ability to hear from God. Mm-hmm. There's some things in a way. It's not that God ain't trying to answer you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, not from this story, but sometimes those things in the way are you. Some of your own issues, some of your own things that you won't let go, that hinder you or prohibit you from being able to hear God. Because it's not that he's not speaking, it's just that maybe you've closed off your ability to be able to hear from him. There's another portion of scripture that deals with that. But that being said, when our lack of maturity can lead to our inability to grow and inability to manage the situations. So to your original question, how do we learn to start growing up? As the Bible says, when I was a child, I thought as a child, I spake as a child. But when I became a man, all of that means is grow up. Mm-hmm. How do we grow up? Because that's what you're really asking. Get in your word. Start praying. Mm-hmm. Ask God to give you some revelation. Give you some understanding over that which you're reading. Talk to some people who are older, wiser, have been there. And I'm not just talking about anybody who's older. Yeah. Other people testify to, their good nature, their wisdom, their guidance, right? It's tough these days because anybody can spin up a church, right? The earlier system was that, you had to be established by, a precedent, church body. So you are planted. Yeah. Right. But now anybody can start up a storefront church. And so you just don't know, and then, so you go through the lineage and say, well, who were you approved by? And usually that will be a tell, about the pedigree, right, of where you came from. But even now, today, you don't know because so many churches get planted, so many people get approved to plant, and not the same level of responsibility and care is taken with regard to the planting. So you don't know until you actually are there and find out. And that's what leads to a lot of people navigating from one church to another church to another church, trying to find a good fit and things of that nature. Above all of those things, you're supposed to be able to hopefully seek out people who are valued for their wisdom. Like the book of Acts gives us direction on the proper selection of leaders within the church, within the body. And the test is those who are approved by man. Those people who like everybody knows them and they value them for wisdom, right? It's like, yeah, that person, no, that's a good person. And yeah. And when you get enough of that testimony going around, that those are, but then there's only so many of them, right? So then what do I do when I can't? Well, guess what? Above all of them, guess what God gave you? His word. And he told you, look, you might have heard the gospel from somebody else and you may have received the gospel. Now, I need you to add to your faith because you believed. You said, I believe in my heart and confess with my mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord. Okay, now that you've believed, let's add to your faith some knowledge. So how do we add knowledge? Well, let me go get in this word. Let me go through a few people's Bible studies. Yeah. Right? Let me grow in my knowledge, which could lead to understanding, right? And through that understanding, I can better reflect and on my reactions and start learning how to respond. Because as I learn and I gain the knowledge of Christ, then I can take more on the mind of Christ. Because the Bible doesn't just give you good information. It gives you, here's the scenario, here's the situation, here's how you probably used to respond, here's how you should respond. And through enough digestion of that information, guess what? You'll begin to grow. You'll begin to mature. You'll begin to change. Yeah. Now, the ideal situation is that you got somebody there who can help fast track that change. The reality of it is that, a guide certainly makes that journey a lot easier. Yeah. Right? But it's not that you can't make the journey, which is you and God. It's just that it's so much easier having a guide. Yeah. But not everybody has a guide. And that's okay. Because it's still very much possible to make this journey, even though you don't have a guide in the form of man. There is a guide, but you got to understand that guide exists so you can actually lean on them. Right? And so that when you go to your word, you can trust that the Holy Spirit teaches all things. And so you go with the faith, believing in your heart that when I pick up this word, you're going to show me something, Lord. Yeah. And if I truly have a desire to get better and to grow, then I don't care what I read. I'm going to get in here and I'm just going to read and I'm going to be diligent and I'm going to trust that you are going to help open this thing up to me. And then I'm going to pray about the things that I don't understand, Lord. And I'm going to pray that you kind of help those things make sense to me, the things that don't make sense. And I'm going to sit on that thing and I'm just going to wait. And I might have to dig into it further, because you know what? I guess I can exhaust this thing. I can read the definition of every word, because Lord, maybe I wasn't that smart in school. You know, it's going to take me a little bit longer to grasp some of these concepts that you're putting out there. And I don't need to try to rush through this thing. You know, maybe I'm going to stick on this one scripture all week until I understand it. And then, you know, there's 52 weeks inside of a year. So if it take me one scripture a week for the rest of the year, for the next 5 years of my life, I'm going to get some of these things. I'm going to understand some of this stuff. Some folks is like, oh, that's really slow. Hey, you know what? Sometimes that's what it takes. And I'm going to tell you like this. You're not going to get all of this all at once. You're going to come back to that thing 10 times across 10 years, and it's going to mean something different in year 10 than it did in year 1. Yeah. It's going to be opened up slowly, right? Because that's the testament of the journey, is the diligence in seeking it and allowing God to open it up to you. And it meaning something different. See, let me tell you something. I entered this thing with no children, and I entered this thing and I continued in this thing with children. And I can tell you that by the time my children were grown, things that I had read and understood one way, I understood more fully by the time my kids were grown and gone. Yeah. And that is part of that journey. And you're like, kids grown and gone. Like, that's 18 plus years. Well, you hope it's 18 plus years. You hope it's 18 years. You know, kids may not be gone at 18. You know, they may be sticking around for a little bit. But that's part of the journey. And when you realize this is not 4 years in college. You can go look. There's a lot of folks with their theological degrees, and they can tell you a whole lot of things about the inner workings of the Bible and the languages and different parts of the Bible, what it means and stuff like that. Holler at me after you'd had some kids. You done raised some kids. After you'd had a marriage and a successful marriage. Holler at me then, right? There's a value to people who are older who've done these things. And young folks are so dismissive in many respects of older generations, and you ain't been through nothing. And whatever the answer is you think you got, the world's going to let you put that to the test. God forbid you waited till your 30s and 40s to listen to older folks. Yeah. I hope you listen to them in your 20s. Because, boy, that'll make your 30s and your 40s that much better. Yeah. But if you're dismissive of people who've already made it through their golden years, there's a whole lot of head bumping that's going to take place, right? And, you know, things always seem to work out for some folks in the beginning, but this is a marathon. This ain't a sprint. There's a whole lot of life to live. 20 years is a blink of an eye. You'll look up and it'll be gone. I know when you've only lived on the earth for 20 years, that seems like an impossible feat because it seems like forever for you. But after your first 20 years, the next 20 years are a blur. Trust me, they go quick. And so go ahead and get some sage advice from some people who've been around, who've been through some things. I've always said to our youth, there's 2 types of wisdom. The wisdom of knowing what to do and the wisdom of knowing what not to do. You can learn from a whole lot of folks. Some folks can't tell you exactly what to do, but there are some folks who can tell you also what not to do to end up where they were. Yeah. You got to take it from both sides. That was a really long address to probably a very simple question.